Hey guys, it's Chris, and welcome back to another Smoke Break. I think this is episode 10 of this little podcast-style, commentary-style video I've been doing. I enjoy this format, and I wanted to say really quickly, if you like this type of video, please give me a thumbs up and let me know in the comments, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As usual, there will be timestamps in the description below. So today we're going to talk about, and give you a quick book update. We're going to talk about Loki, episode 5, that just came out early this morning. House of the Dragon has a little bit of news, and we have a movie of the week as well that I watched, The Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt on Amazon Prime, so we'll be talking about that as well for just a minute. And again, all these timestamps will be in the description below, so if you don't like Loki, for example, yet you want to hear about House of the Dragon, you can still check out the video. So there's a little bit something for everybody in these types of videos, and I enjoy doing them. I'm not going to do a lot of editing, all that kind of stuff as well, just for the sake of my own sanity. So anyway, let me know if you like these videos. Leave me a comment. I may actually go back and do additional section in these videos going forward if you guys have questions and stuff like that in the comments. I remember the old school Q&As from back in the day, and I really enjoyed those. That was primarily Game of Thrones based, but it can be anything. So I'll be glad to grab your questions from the comments and then do it, start a segment in the next smoke break. So anyway, if you're new here or if you hadn't been around for a while, I have written a book, and I'm really, really excited about the book. It's called The Crimson Gods. It is a fantasy, medieval fantasy, with a little dark fantasy twist in there as well, and I'm really excited about getting it out to the public. We're looking right now at probably a September, if not maybe October release date because of just timing of everything. But I have the front cover. It's almost on its final draft. I really, really love it. It looks really good. I can't wait to have it in my hands and show you and do a cover reveal. My book is now officially copyrighted as well. I got my certificate back from the Library of Congress and the Copyright Office as well. So I have a Library of Congress control number. I have all my ISBNs, all that good stuff for all the formats. So all that's done. And I should receive the final edit back tomorrow, the line edit. And that will be done. I will have that in my hands tomorrow, make a few revisions, pretty much accept all the revisions because it's all about punctuation, all that good stuff as well. So basically going to accept all that, and it starts the formatting process the 15th of July, and that's where they lay out the interior of the book, check everything, whatever. Once that's done and completed, then I will have a, as far as the formatting, all the edits are done, all that good stuff. I'll have a proofread done that checks everything from the inside, interior, formatting, all that stuff at one time. And then I can start sending out ARC copies or advanced reader copies to people to get their opinions, get some feedback, maybe ask for a review in return on Amazon, all that stuff as well. So really excited about the book. If you want more information about it, keep up with behind the scenes, feel free to go to my website and join the newsletter there. I'll leave that link in the description below, or you can join our Patreon community as well and receive free books and goodies and all that stuff as well. All that stuff is built into the tiers on Patreon. All right, so real quickly, let's talk about the movie of the week. Then we'll move on to Loki as well as House of the Dragon, some news there. I watched The Tomorrow War, as I mentioned earlier, with Chris Pratt on Amazon Prime. I didn't really expect to watch this when I saw the preview, but then I saw the trailer and I thought, okay, it can at least be entertaining. And it's pretty much exactly what I thought it would be. It's a pretty good movie. It's not great or outstanding. It's not going to win Academy Awards or anything like that. But it is a good overall, entertaining movie. So I would suggest if you've seen the trailer, definitely check this movie out. But essentially what's going on is you have Chris Pratt, and I believe it's the year 2024. I'm not 100% sure. Him and his family are kind of a regular suburban family. They're all watching the World Cup at a party or whatever. But anyway, humans from like 30 years in the future appear during the World Cup in the middle of the field through this kind of a cloud thing, whatever they figured out, time travel, and need help for fighting aliens in the future. And this is definitely an alien movie. There's no spoiler there. It's in all the trailers and all that stuff as well. So what they do is start this draft from the past to go into the future and save humanity. Otherwise, everybody's going to die and the human race is going to be wiped out. That's essentially the synopsis of the whole damn story. So I won't get into any spoilers or anything. I'll let you check it out. But it's pretty good. I mean, it's kind of what you expect. Chris Pratt, obviously, just for minor things here that you obviously expect because you've seen in the trailer if you've watched it, he's definitely going to, be drafted. He goes into the future. And there's a slight twist in the future, so I won't mention any of that and spoil anything. But overall, check it out. It's hard for me to watch these actors now, especially from the MCU, play any other character because I just picture him as Star-Lord. He's essentially Star-Lord without the clothing in this movie. Not that funny, though, not that type of comedies in there. But I just always see, it's hard for me to separate, as I get older for some reason, separate the people, the actors from characters that I've seen them play. So for me, he'll always be Star-Lord, just like Robert Downey Jr. will always be Tony Stark and Iron Man. So it's hard for me to see him in other things and not think of, for example, Star-Lord. But the point being that it's a pretty good movie. It's not, it's like I said, it's not going to win any Academy Awards, but it's not a bad movie at all. So I don't really do ratings, on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, but I would say it's a good 6 out of 10 if I had to do one. So definitely check it out. This is free on Amazon Prime if you pay for Prime, so I guess technically it's not free. But the point being that it's a good entertaining movie, and it's pretty much exactly what you would expect. It's got some some funny moments and all that stuff as well, and a little twist that you might enjoy in there as well. So anyway, check that out on Amazon Prime, The Tomorrow War, starring Chris Pratt. All right, let's talk about Loki, episode 5. We only have one more episode to go. Loki is, I think, by far my favorite Marvel show so far. I loved WandaVision. I loved Falcon Winter Soldier. But as far as, kind of the Marvel-esque, comic-y style stuff, I think Loki is my favorite so far in some ways, and in some ways it's not. And what I mean by that is, personally, I've never liked the multiverse crap. To me, it's like a cheat code, the multiverse. I mean, you can kill people and get away with it. You can bring them back. You can just say, oh, he came from Earth, 473. And that's one of the reasons I didn't watch any of the new Star Trek movies except for the first one until they destroyed Vulcan, and then it destroyed basically every show I'd ever watched. But they kind of have a get-out-of-jail-free card, and they just said, oh, no, it's the multiverse. It's an alternate reality, an alternate universe. It's not the Captain Kirk that you know. Well, then I don't want to watch it because I want to see the Captain Kirk that I know grow up and talk and go through Starfleet and all that kind of stuff. So I've never enjoyed the multiverse stuff. But if they do it right, it's okay. If they don't cheat like that and just, they're able to get by with anything. So Loki is good. I've really been enjoying it. And this episode was not my favorite episode. I think it's getting a little bit over the top. Obviously, this will contain spoilers, so if you hadn't seen it, skip on to the next section or whatever. But, obviously we saw in the last episode, Mobius as well as Loki get pruned and end up in the void, as they call it, which essentially is a place where everything that's so-called pruned, you thought originally they just, were wiped from existence. They actually end up here on this planet, I guess. I'm not sure. And that's what we saw in the background is a bunch of different stuff from a bunch of different eras of time. They got pruned. Timelines, they got trimmed off from the TVA, all that good stuff, apparently. But we all figured out, and we were all correct in the aspect of the Time Lords were not real. So, of course, the idea is that Loki and Sylvie end up here because Sylvie obviously prunes herself in this episode to join Loki to she's willing to die with him, essentially. But they want to figure out how to get the hell out of here because they said no one ever returns. And there's just this big, weird cloud monster there. You see all these variant Lokis. Obviously, you have old school Loki, older Loki, you have kid Loki, you have alligator Loki. All this stuff is from the comics, so they're all there, and they've all been pruned at some point for some timeline. He meets all these variations of himself, these variants, as they call them. And essentially, it's a little bit just, it's kind of like a circus, literally, in this show. In this episode, I mean, so I didn't hate it by any means, but it was just one of the weaker ones. And then to get off this weird planet, it was good to see Mobius again, by the way. So Mobius is there too. Obviously, he got pruned, and we see Mobius. He has a pretty cool scene. He comes up in a pizza delivery car that got pruned out of some timeline somewhere, and helps rescue Sylvie. They kind of make up because he, of course, now realizes that he was, essentially kidnapped from his timeline somewhere. And that's the whole thing is, where's all this coming from? Are these people missing from the main timeline in the MCU that we've watched in all these movies? Or is it from different timelines? And that's what I mean. They can kind of get by with what they want with all these, different timelines as far as multiverse stuff. But it is leading to Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man. I'm sure they'll do multiverse as well into the Spider-Verse stuff, as well as Ant-Man and Wasp, where we're going to have Kang the Conqueror. And, of course, that's a big theory that Kang the Conqueror is behind this. So anyway, she figures out how to enchant this fucking cloud monster, and Loki joins in. Real Loki joins in, and he figures out how to do it too somehow. And they essentially just touch this little part of this cloud monster while it's focused on the USS Eldridge, which, by the way, is a pretty good little Easter egg there. It dropped out of the sky. The USS Eldridge, for those that may not know, is from the famous Philadelphia experiment. Of course, that's since been proven to be bullshit since the USS Eldridge was never in Philadelphia. But the point being that that's what it was from lore. And this is what I do enjoy about multiverse stuff is these little Easter eggs they can do. So from the real world, for example, we have the Devil's Triangle, the Bermuda Triangle where ships and planes go missing. We have the Philadelphia experiment, all these things in our own lore. And then in these movies, we can see what actually happens according to how they write these movies. So I think that's pretty cool as well to see stuff like that. So that's one aspect I do enjoy about multiverse stuff. But anyway, she's able to enchant, or they are able to enchant this thing, and it just kind of just vanishes, and a hole opens up, and there's some kind of city behind there. And we've all, speculated in the past. I did a video a couple weeks ago that I believe this may be the quantum realm, because it would make sense for where time doesn't work the same way as everywhere else. That's the only time we've heard this reference before. That way, it explains why Infinity Stones, the Tesseract being an Infinity Stone, all that stuff in Magic doesn't work at the TVA, so it's somewhere outside of time, and that's really vague, obviously. So if you go back to the comic stuff, it seems to be pointing to Kang the Conqueror as far as him being the big villain, which he's already been cast in the next Ant-Man and Wasp movie as well. So Kang the Conqueror will be a villain in MCU, so this seems to be setting that up. But of course, we said all this before. In WandaVision, we said it was going to be Mephisto pulling all the strings, but it was just Agatha and Falcon Winter Soldier. The power broker ended up being, Sharon Carter. And in Loki, we're saying that it's probably Kang the Conqueror, but it might just be another variant of Loki himself. But I did pause this episode and looked at that city. It didn't look like Kang's city called Kannapolis from the comics. It didn't look like the comic version of that. Now, of course, they could change that, but we did see that bubble from Ant-Man and Wasp that I talked about in the previous video. And in the quantum realm where you had this little bubble city in there. So they could still make that happen. And I think that makes more sense. And it kind of leaves the main stuff alone as far as all that going on in the MCU as far as Endgame and all the Avengers movies, because that's what I said before is if you have a place where Infinity Stones don't mean anything, they're fucking paperweights, and everything's pre-written and everything has a destiny, what's the point of anything we watch in the MCU? So that would really kind of keep it separate, but really cool at the same time if somehow Loki took the Tesseract from Avengers Endgame and ended up in the quantum realm, and he's got to figure out how to get the hell out of there. This was not horrible by any means. I just think it's a little bit over the top and weird because they don't know how things work here. And yet they kind of just guessed, hey, I'm going to try to enchant this cloud monster, and it fucking worked. So, oh well, we'll see what happens in the final episode next week. One episode to go, and that show's gone, and we're on to Black Widow coming out July 10th, and then Spider-Man comes out in December, and that's the only two Marvel movies we have of this year. And Black Widow, starting July 10th, is the official beginning of Phase 4. All right, so let's talk about House of the Dragon. We have a little bit of news. It's going to be a while before we get a trailer, a teaser trailer, and a full trailer specifically to talk about. We're all guessing this is going to come out next year around April, the same time Game of Thrones came out. At least that's what I hope they do. I hope they go back to April on Sunday night so we can all gather around our televisions and then get on live streams and hang out and talk about this shit. I was talking to Gray Area last night a little bit, just for a few minutes. We were chatting back and forth a little bit, talking about some YouTube stuff, and I really missed, I missed the good old days, the quote-unquote good old days, of course, where, we had this big community that was all excited about this show. And, every week we got together in some way, shape, or form, whether it be a live stream or all these videos. We had all this community. We had people, collaborating with each other. And I miss all that. And Game of Thrones Season 8 just destroyed everything. And this channel was destroyed before that anyway. It was already going way down before Season 8 even started. But Season 8 was kind of the death knell, and that's what we were talking about. So not to sit there and whine about anything, because I really am proud and appreciative of everybody that's been here over the years. But this is one of the things that kind of, it's bad for your mental health as a YouTuber that you don't see going on in the background is, when it's just gone, it's just gone. And it don't make any sense, you know what I'm saying? Because people still want to talk about these other shows and movies, and nothing that I do personally, and then some of my friends as well, some other YouTubers in this community, they're all still losing subscribers. Some are kind of back to barely gaining again. But you really, there's really no traction. Everything's dead because Game of Thrones Season 8 was so underwhelming. Most people hated it, and if you liked it, that's fine too, but most people did hate it, and then, of course, that kind of destroyed the channel. But anyway, that's one of the main reasons I'm looking forward to House of the Dragon. It got me a lot more excited about it than I thought I would be based off Season 8, because we have material here. We know what we're going to see pretty much, and it's just a matter of how they develop it for the screen. There's still really good stories in Westeros, regardless of how Season 8 ended, so I am looking forward to House of the Dragon. So the big news is they've cast 2 more people for House of the Dragon, and this time they've cast, and I'm looking here on HollywoodReporter.com, but this is all over the internet, of course, because any news with House of the Dragon, people are trying to latch onto it and get it out there, so everybody picked this up, obviously. But 2 more roles, and it's really interesting what they're deciding to do here, and gives us a little bit of insight as to what we may see. They have cast Millie Alcock from The Reckoning and The Gloaming, I believe that's what that reads, as a younger version of Princess Rhaenyra Targaryen. Described as the king's firstborn child. She's of pure Valyrian blood, etc., etc. I did a whole entire video on Rhaenyra Targaryen, so I'll link the House of the Dragon playlist in the description below so you can check out all those character studies. It's basic overviews of these characters we're going to definitely see in House of the Dragon during the Dance of the Dragons. So we're going to see a younger Rhaenyra Targaryen, and also Emily Carey has been cast as a younger version of Alicent Hightower, the daughter of Otto Hightower, who I just talked about as well in the last House of the Dragon video. So the question is why? I mean, this obviously tells us we're going to see flashbacks of some sort or multiple timelines. I really wish they'd go back as far as Aegon the Conqueror, because my favorite Targaryens that I've read about that I've never seen on screen other than artwork or whatever is Rhaenyra and Visenya Targaryen, the original sister wives to Aegon the Conqueror. So maybe they'll somehow jump back to Aegon's conquest and see, aspects of that as well. I'd really love to see that in House of the Dragon. So, but it looks like they are obviously focusing, as we mentioned plenty of times, they're focusing on the Dance of the Dragons, obviously with who they cast. But this tells us we're going to see flashbacks. We're going to see younger versions of these characters. And I don't know how often. This could be one time in one episode, just like we saw young Ned a couple times, but maybe it's just a couple times for a couple of flashbacks. But it could be more significant than that. And so now, knowing that we're going to see younger versions, I can kind of give you an idea of what I think we're going to see on House of the Dragon, because we kind of know from the books and history and written lore and all that good stuff, what went on while they were younger as well. Now, we've already talked about the Dance of the Dragons in basically in a big overview of that, so that video will be in the playlist as well for House of the Dragon. We've talked about that before. We've talked about Rhaenyra during the Dance of the Dragon. We've talked about Queen Alicent. We've talked about Otto Hightower and Daemon Targaryen, the Rogue Prince. So we've talked about all these people. But what did they do when they were younger that could be worth seeing in the show? Now, I mentioned a little bit of this before, but let's start with Rhaenyra. At 16, she took over Dragonstone. She was named the Crown Princess because her father, Viserys I Targaryen, named her the heir of the Iron Throne, so she took over Dragonstone. That's where the Crown Prince or Princess usually stays, so she ruled Dragonstone at a very young age of 16. And during this time where people knew she was going to be the next queen of Westeros, of course, she was courted by a lot of men from all different houses. You had Blackwoods and Brackens and Freys and Lannisters and Strongs and all these different houses, all these men and people trying to, get her hand in marriage. But she ended up marrying Lenore Valyrian from House Valyrian, of course, due to her father kind of saying, you're no longer going to be the heir, damn it, if you don't marry Lenore. And so she ended up doing that, even though she was not interested in him at all and thought he would be a better fit for one of her brothers. And as I mentioned before, Rhaenyra and Lenore had 3 sons together. They had Jacaerys or Jace, they had Lucerys or Luke, and Joffrey or Joff as well. Basically, it's just kind of a regular background for a would-be princess, but why would we see this in a flashback or maybe even full episodes where they're younger? But of course, this is Westeros, and it was rumored that those 3 children I just mentioned were not actually the offspring of Lenore Valyrian, but the offspring of her so-called lover, Sir Harwin Strong, because all 3 were born with brown hair. So there's going to be some drama there, and that probably ties in a little bit to Queen Alicent as well, because she was well aware of all this, and apparently they were actually pretty good friends back in the day, although, again, during the Dance of the Dragons, they were mortal enemies because of the whole thing with Aegon, her son, being Queen Alicent's son, where she was trying to get him on the throne, and did, when Queen Rhaenyra was the actual heir. But the point being that at one time they actually got along. So back in her younger days, Queen Alicent stayed in court after her father was sent back to Old Town after being handed the king. She stayed there and took care of the old king, King Jaehaerys, which we may see him now as well, the old king or the good king. He was one of the great Targaryen kings, some say the greatest, and a lot of people thought Jon Snow's real name would be Jaehaerys instead of Aegon. But of course, Mushroom, as I mentioned before, says that basically Alicent was also deflowered by Daemon Targaryen, who would eventually marry Rhaenyra Targaryen. So there's going to be some juicy stuff in there. I really hope they cast Mushroom, because we need to see Mushroom. We can't just go by the word of some boring-ass guy from the Citadel. And at the same time, her father, Sir Otto Hightower, and Prince Daemon were at odds with each other. So there's going to be some inter-family quarrels here, some good juicy stuff. So we really need to see Mushroom's perspective. So I hope they cast Mushroom. You know, the truth of these things have never really been uncovered. It's just speculation at this point. So anyway, in the years that followed, she eventually married King Viserys after his first wife died. And of course, it sets up the Dance of the Dragons, where she is the queen. But of course, her husband is the father of Rhaenyra, who is the named heir. And then once he dies, they all kind of ignore his wishes and make Aegon II king, being Alicent's son. And that starts the Dance of the Dragons in the first place. Both of these ladies want to be essentially kind of the first lady of the realm. But in the famous words of Highlander, there can be only one. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. And as usual, thank you for all the support, especially you guys on Patreon. And a huge shout out to my executive Patreon SmokeScreen producers. And of course, if you dig what I do here, please give these videos a like, comment, and a share. And as I mentioned before, leave your questions in the comments below as well, and I'll start a Q&A segment if we get enough. And of course, be sure to subscribe to get everything and click that notification bell so you're notified when I drop a new video. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.